The E46 M3 is going to go down as one of the best sports cars of its time, and it's still very highly desirable. A lot of people are looking for E46 M3s on the regular, even with the way the market is currently. Honestly, I think they're kind of overpriced, but there are still ways for you to get a cheaper E46 M3. And one of those ways is going to be going with an SMG transmission. So the E46 M3 was available with either a 6-speed manual transmission or the SMG, which in reality is a true 6-speed manual, except for the fact that all of the shifting and the clutch pedal is replaced by hydraulics. So it's in a sense kind of automatic because those tasks are automated for you, but all of the drivetrain, everything is actually a 6-speed manual, which is why you're able to convert the SMG cars by adding in the shifting mechanism as well as a clutch pedal. And I mean, that's a very simplified version of converting, but you can make it into a normal 6-speed manual car. Now, a lot of people don't like the SMG system, mainly because they're expecting it to behave like an automatic car. And that's not the case at all, because this is still a manual transmission. It's just hydraulically assisted. So you're still going to have all those quirks. Like you're going to roll back, you're going to feel the gear changes. Even though they might be quicker than if you were shifting it yourself, you're still going to feel all of that. Now, the SMG system overall is actually not bad, especially if you're tracking your car, you're doing spirited driving. If you're trying to chase down lap times, you're going to be better off with an SMG as opposed to a normal traditional 6-speed manual because the shifting is going to be much quicker. But that's where all of the fun ends, because the SMG system has a lot of issues. And a lot of these issues go misdiagnosed or just not diagnosed at all, and a lot of people just jump the gun straight to a traditional 6-speed manual conversion, which is honestly the only way to bulletproof your SMG E46 M3, is to convert it to a traditional 6-speed manual. That way you get rid of all of that hydraulic system and you don't have to worry about all the other sensors or any of that, and it just becomes a normal manual car and you only have the other E46 M3 issues at that point. But let's say you want to stick with the SMG system. I'm going to go through today a couple of the most common issues and how you can solve them. We're going to start with the easiest issue. So the SMG cars, they have sensors in the hood latches. And what happens is if your hood is not completely closed and those latches are not engaging those sensors properly, your car will not go into gear. The gear light is going to keep flashing, it's going to stay in neutral. Whenever you try to shift, it's just not going to happen. So if you're having that issue where your car's not going into gear, make sure you go check those hood sensors. Even try slamming the hood a couple times, and if it doesn't come back to life, then chances are that might be the issue. And one way to confirm if the hood sensor is bad or not is going to require a scanner like INPA or ISTA. Now, a lot of these BMWs, especially the more electronically advanced they get, whether they're sensors or stuff like that, you are going to want to have some kind of scanner that allows you to actuate different sensors and check live readings from all of that. So make sure you have one of those if you're doing all this stuff by yourself. Now, if you've already ruled out your hood sensors and you're still having issues with the car not going into gear or just not doing anything, like the SMG system not working, one of the most common problems is the relay itself. It's often referred to as the Salmon Relay, and that's because it's salmon colored and it's located underneath the DME cover. And that relay can be a cause of a host of issues. And one way to diagnose that salmon relay, and this is the most common because that relay controls mostly the pump, the SMG pump itself. So what you can do is you can try to listen for the pump, see if it's priming when you unlock your car. You can even actuate it with the scanner that I said before. So you want to check that, and it's always good to have a bunch of those relays on hand just in case if something's going on. And hand in hand with that relay is the fuse. So there's a 40 amp fuse that controls the SMG system and mostly the SMG pump. Now, these fuses don't usually just go out. If they go out, that means the pump might be on its way out and it's drawing too many amps, and that's why it's blowing the fuse. So if your fuse is blowing and you put a new one in, it blows right away, your SMG pump is trash. Now, one of the main reasons the SMG system fails is because of temperature-related issues. The SMG pump is located underneath the intake manifold in the belly of the engine, so it experiences a lot of heat. And there are options where you can relocate the whole SMG system, and I'll have all of those links down below where you can look more into that. And you can relocate that SMG pump into the empty bin often referred to as the drug bin in the E46 engine compartment, or you could also relocate it to the trunk. And that's going to help a lot with these heat related issues. And along with that, there are temperature sensors on the SMG pump mechanism itself. Now, whenever the SMG pump starts overheating or getting too hot, that sensor is going to get triggered and it's going to put you into a limp mode kind of situation to preserve the pump. Now, those sensors can go bad. You can check that temperature sensor. You can also do what's called a resistor mod, which helps kind of spoof that temperature sensor and allows that SMG pump to operate a little bit more than it would normally do. So I'll have that link down below as well. The sensor itself is very cheap. It's not too hard to replace, but a lot of the SMG stuff, especially when it relates to the pump, you are going to have to remove the intake plenum. And I'll also have that video linked down below. Continuing on with sensors, another sensor that often fails is the gear position sensor. Now, when the gear position sensor fails, you're only going to be able to go into certain gears. And that's pretty much the telltale sign that your gear position sensor is bad. And it usually does throw a code when you scan it with INPA or ISTA. Now, this sensor is located on the very, very top of the transmission all the way at the back. So it is kind of harder to access, but it is still accessible. And if it does fail completely, then you might not be able to shift into any gears. But usually you have a warning sign beforehand, which allows you to shift into certain gears. So along with that gear position sensor, sometimes that sensor doesn't go bad, but something that works hand in hand with that sensor goes bad. I'm talking about the compression springs. So these springs are on the side of the transmission, and sometimes they crack. And when they crack, they do not allow that gear position sensor to get an accurate reading, which results in not allowing you to go into certain gears because the sensor is not sensing exactly where it's at. Those springs are not that easy to replace. They're very cheap, but you do have to either tilt the transmission all the way back, so disconnect the exhaust, the drive shaft, and all of that, and then tilt it back, and then even then it's still very hard to get in there to replace them. The easiest way to do it, honestly, would be to pull the transmission off, pull off the blind plugs that usually have these springs, and change them. So if you ever have your transmission off, whether that's for a clutch or flywheel job, make sure you replace all those springs proactively. Now, a couple other sensors that don't usually go out often, but when they do throw codes, are going to be the SMG Pressure Sensor, as well as the shifter assembly itself that's inside the cabin. So if either one of those goes bad, you're going to have codes for it, and that's going to help you diagnose that. I hate to say that. I mean, I wish there was an easier method for you to actually sit there and diagnose it without having to scan, but the scan tool, if you have that ability, why not use it? It's so easy. You just literally plug it in. You don't have to do really any work. And once you get those codes, then you can troubleshoot and go from there. And now, just like any manual transmission, the SMG transmission has a normal clutch, flywheel, throwout bearing, and all of that. So if you're having any issues with shifting and stuff like that, it could also be just those normal maintenance items. So that's always something that you want to check out as well. It's kind of hard to check on your own without pulling the transmission off, but usually you'll be able to tell when the clutch is slipping or stuff like that. If the throwout bearing is bad, you're going to be able to hear it. If the clutch pivot pin goes bad because they're plastic, then you're not going to be able to shift either. You're also going to be able to hear when that clutch pivot pin goes out because it's going to make a racket inside the bell housing. And now, the biggest issue of them all, the SMG pump itself. Now, the SMG pump is a $4,000 item if you're able to get your hands on it. Now, there are companies that rebuild these and they'll sell it to you for around $2K still, but even then, who knows how long that rebuild is going to last. So, if your SMG pump goes out, honestly, your best bet would be to convert to a traditional 6-speed. So adding that gear shifting mechanism, the clutch pedal, and modifying the bell housing. Now, we have videos on all of this. I'll have all that stuff linked down below, but the pricing for that is going to keep going up from here on out, especially with inflation and everything, parts getting harder to find. Pricing is going to go up. So I used to be able to finish the whole SMG conversion for right around $4,000 with all the parts, the BMW Performance short shifter, and all of that, getting the bell housing machined and everything. Now that pricing has already went up significantly. Now we're already looking at $5,000 for the bare minimum, and it's still going to keep going higher and higher. So if you have an SMG transmission car, let me tell you, if you're planning on keeping the car for a long time, it's probably going to be in your best interest to go ahead and get that conversion done soon. because once those parts get even harder to find, who knows where that pricing is going to be. Now, of course, there's other SMG issues that are going to be oddball issues with wiring or even software related, but you don't really see those that often. So if you're having SMG issues, like I said, get yourself a scanner. That's going to be your best friend, especially with all of these sensors and stuff. It's going to help you diagnose those really, really well and easy. Now, I'll have all the stuff linked down below for everything that I've talked about. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if I missed anything that you've had an experience with on your SMG car, also leave that comment down below, because there's always people going through the comments trying to figure out solutions to their issues. If you guys haven't noticed already, I've got my E46 M3 convertible behind me. We're doing a whole special episode on that car, trying to get it back on the road. So make sure you're subscribed, like this video if you like it, comment down below, and make sure you stay tuned for this video that's going to be coming out hopefully very, very soon. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.